notes for Chapter 0, Lesson 13. It's representing data using statistical displays, different graphs to represent different types of information. On here I have 4 different definitions of different types of graphs. I want you to have those written down. We will be talking about 2 others in class, circle graphs and box and whiskers plots, but right now write these 4 down. So if you need to pause the video, and I know you may have to zoom in to see those, so make sure you get those definitions written down. The first type that we're looking at is the bar graph. And notice the definition says a graphic form using bars to make comparison of statistics. And then I've given you the example right here. You can look at the example. Right there's a bar graph. The difference between a bar graph and a histogram, look at the definition of a histogram. It's a graphical display that uses bars to display numerical data that have been organized into equal intervals. So they are in, the histogram is in intervals, okay? Meaning like, let me see if I can zoom in on this so you can see it. Oops, nope. Won't let me try that again. Sorry. Let's erase that. See if it'll let me zoom in on it so you can see it a little bit better. See over here how this is in, well, I can't get into it where you can see it any better, I apologize. But where you can see the intervals here, okay? Like from 0 to 10, 11 to 21, okay? That's the salary in thousands of dollars. So it's organized it into intervals, whereas the histogram, or excuse me, whereas the bar graph is just like on this one, it's just the types of movies. It's just the horror films or the comedies. But in a histogram, you're going to have the interval. Normally in the histogram, and for our purposes, we're going to say that the histogram, notice that the bars touch each other because they're intervals. They butt right up next to each other. In the bar graph, they are not. Okay? A line graph would be used to show changes in data over a period of time, and then I've given you the example of the line graph right there. A stem and leaf plot is a system used to condense a set of data where the greatest value of the data forms the stem and the second forms the leaves, okay? And again, you may want to pause and zoom in on that. If not, we're going to do an example in a few minutes, but make sure you get those 4 kind of straight in your mind, what they mean and how they work. Okay, now look at this. Let's make a bar graph first. Okay, look at this example. The table shows the results of a student survey on favorite music. Make a bar graph to display the data. Now notice one of the things I didn't point out to you when we had the bar graph. We always have our 2 axes. We have, remember, the x-axis is the one that's going horizontal, and the y-axis is going up and down. Now, you don't have to label them X and Y when you're doing them, but we do have them, and you do need to label them with what they mean. For example, on this one, I'm going to put a title up here as well, like maybe this is called Favorite Music, so people understand what the graph represents. And then down here, I might put type of music. All right. And over here, this will be the number of students. All right. Now, looking at my numbers, I've got 13, 35, 20, and 32. So you've got to come up with a way, and it has to be even. I can't just put like, you can't do something like 13 and then come up here and put 20. You can't do that. You've got to do those in even intervals. So maybe if I counted by, we might count just by tens to be okay. So I could go like 10, 20, 30, 40. And now I'm going to do my types of music. All right, my first type was country. I'm trying to write small here. And my country music, how many liked country music? 13. So my bar is going to come up just right above the 10. That's going to be my country music. And you can shade that in. You can use different, if you're just doing it with pencil, you can use different designs. If you want to get out colored pencils and make it really pretty, you can do that as well. My next type was hip hop. And hip hop had 35, so I'm going to go halfway between the 30 and the 40. And there's my bar for my hip hop. And then I have metal. I guess it's heavy metal, I don't know. And heavy metal or metal was 20, so I'm going to go up to the 20. And then my last type was rock. And rock had 32, so I'm going to go up just above the 30 the best I can. All right, and there's my bar graph. Now, the big thing to remember on these bar graphs is you've got to label both axes. Remember, this is an axis. This is your x-axis. This is my y-axis. Label both of them. Your numbers have to be in even intervals. You could have counted by 5s. You could have counted by 2s. Okay, however you wanted to do it, but they needed to be in even intervals. And then make sure you give it a title. Okay, so people know what you're talking about. But that's my bar graph. All right, look at the next one. We're going to do an example of making a histogram. There we go. The table shows the ages of volunteers at an animal shelter. Make a histogram of the frequencies. All right, we're going to leave this part off right now and the cumulative frequencies. I'm going to leave that part off. We'll talk about that briefly in class, but for our purposes right now, I just want you to be able to make a histogram. All right, same thing with the histogram. If you'll remember, it looks a lot like the bar graph, except for what? It's done in intervals. See, I could look at this data and know that a histogram would work well for this because, look, it's given to me in an interval, in equal intervals, okay? So again, it looks a lot like it, so I know I've got to have my two axes. I got to have a title. We might do volunteers, just as our title. You could do animal shelter volunteers. All right, I need to label my axes. So I'm going to let my ages be down here. And then the number of volunteers. I'm just going to put number of volunteers. Sorry, having a hard time spelling. Number of volunteers. All right, so again, I've got to decide on how I'm going to number my chart going up right here. Okay. All right, and I go from, what, 4 to 12. So maybe I want to number by, we'll just number by 2s. Well, and I might need to, hold on. Might need to space those out a little different if I'm going to number it that way. So we'll go, what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay? And now down here, across my x-axis is my ages, and I can look at them. My first one is 16 to 25. And how many were in my 16 to 25? Just reading it right off my chart is 6. So my bar is going to go up to the 6 and come down. Now on this one, it really will help if you'll differentiate between the bars. Again, with it, you can get out a colored pencil and do it that way, or with the designs, because they'll kind of run into each other. Because in the histogram, remember, they're going to touch. Because that's 16 to 25. The next one is going to be 26 to 35. And in my 26 to 35, I have 4. All right, looking at my next one, 36 to 45. I have 9. And notice I'm just making them touch. Okay, just doing the best that I can. About guesstimating about where they should be. 46 to 55, I have 12. Okay, extending my axis on out. And then I have 56 to 65, and that has 8. And then you have your histogram. Again, you've got to remember, label the axes. Make sure you do even number up here, and then you have your intervals, okay, and give it a title. So we use a bar graph when we're representing just data, that's just pure numbers, easy to represent. We're going to use that histogram when I have the intervals. That makes it easier to represent the intervals, okay? Next, we're going to look at the line graph. Remember, the definition of the line graph was it showed amount of change over time. So that's what we're going to be showing with this one. We're going to be showing the amount of change over time. The wind speed, it says make a line graph of the wind speed forecast data. So again, it's showing a change over time. Again, I have my two axes. I've got to label those. Now, you may label yours different than mine. It just means your graph's going to be going the other direction, and that's okay. To get those, just make sure you get them labeled and you follow it. So again, I'm going to label this one. I'm going to let this one be my time. Okay, this one is going to be my wind speed. My y-axis will be my wind speed. Again, I'm going to give it a title. This could be wind speed forecast. All right, so again, my times are given for me right up there. So I can start with midnight. And I'm just going to put, rather than put midnight, I'm going to put 12 a.m. Kind of hard for me to write this small. 12 a.m. My next time is 3 a.m. My next one is 6 a.m. Next is 9 a.m. Then I've got noon, which will be 12 p.m. And then 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 9 p.m. Now, over on my y-axis, my up and down axis, I have my wind speed. And I'm looking at my wind speeds. They go from 4 to 24. So you've got to, again, decide how you want to break that up. I may just do it in 5s. Again, you might do it in 2s or however it works best for you. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And then you're just going to mark them with a dot. So at 12 a.m., at midnight, my forecasted speed was 4 miles per hour. Okay, probably a good idea to label this miles per hour too, so somebody just looking at your chart would know what it was. So at 3 a.m. was 4, same place. 6 a.m. was at 8, so we're going up just a little bit. 9 a.m. was 11, so I'm going right above the 9 a.m., about to where 11 would be. Noon was 21. 3 p.m. was 24. 6 p.m. was 14. And 9 p.m. was 17. And then all you have to do is connect your dots with straight lines. And that gives you the line graph of the wind speed. It shows the amount of change over time. Okay? Now, the last one we're going to look at in the video today is the stem and leaf plot. The stem and leaf plot is really just a way to organize information in an understandable way. Now, when you remember in the definition, we talked about there was a stem, which was the highest place value, and then your leaf was your other place value. So again, my highest place value in this data is in the tens place. So I'm going to go from everywhere, like I've got a 2 in here. So what would be the tens place? If I just have the number 2, it's going to be a 0, right? So I go anywhere from 0 up to my biggest one looks like it is 40. So I've got in my tens place all the way down, excuse me here, all the way down to the 4. And then I've got to go in and put in my leaf. Now they do need to be in numerical order. So I'm going to do it first, and then just write them down, and then I'll go back and order them. So like just starting with my list, I've got 3, so that's going to go right there. Just kind of mark it off. 18, I've got the 1 already in the tens place because that's the stem. So I'm just going to put an 8 over here for the leaf. 35, again I've got the 3, I'm just going to put the 5. 20, put a 0 because I already got the 10. 5, 9, 4, 2, 10, because the 1 is in the tens place, 0 in the ones place. 12, I got 15 twice. 22, 5, 17, 16, 9, 2, 38, another 2, 3, I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to put it up there. 11, 23, 41, and 3. Now I've got my data over here. I do need to order it, so I'm going to just redo my chart and put those in order. Stem and my leaf. And I've got 0. Putting those in order, I've got what? 1, 2, 3 2s, 2, 2, 2, and they do all have to be listed. The other way you could do this is you could order your data first and then just make your stem and leaf plot one time. Either way works. I've got 3 3s. 1, 2, 3. I've got a 4. 2 5s. And 2 9s. And it really is, do need to put commas in there so it doesn't look like that's all one number. Okay? And then I've got my 1 for my stem. I've got 0, 1, 2, 2 5s, 6, 7, 8. Okay? 2, I already had those in order. 0, 2, and 3. 3 was 5 and 8. And 4 is a 1. Now I'm going to erase this part over here just so it doesn't get confusing. And now I have my stem and leaf plot. Now, they're very easy to make. One of the things that you can't forget to do is to give your key. And the key is going to look like this. You're going to pick one. It doesn't matter what number you pick. I'm going to pick 35. So 3 line 5 equals 35. So that the person who is looking at the data understands what's the stem and what's the leaf. In this case, if the stem was the tens place, the leaf was the fives place. So make sure you not only put the graph or the data, but that you put a key so that the person looking at it can understand what that stem and leaf plot actually means. Okay? So make sure you do that. Probably ought to make sure too that you always put that title, that this is the weight of packages. So again, somebody that's just looking at it, that doesn't see the data that you started with, understands what you're talking about. Okay? So again, today we've talked about bar graphs, histograms, line graphs, and stem and leaf plots. All right? In class, we're going to be doing a project with a circle graph, and we will talk about a box and whisker plot. Okay? All right, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.